Do not applaud till you hear what a person has to say.
Your turn to travel before you.
There is no group in the world that I would rather stand in front of than a group of activists. Did you ever ask yourself, what in the world is an activist? An activist is someone that looks at it and says, I don't like the way it is, and I'm going to do my best to change it. If there was ever a time in the world that should be in vogue, is right now. You know, I've been down the path. I changed my diet for my health. I opened my eyes and understood that look at what was happening to the animals. And then a no-brainer. It was the environment. But look at today. Today, we're standing here today, the first time in human history that a species has changed the climate. First time. Never happened before. Well, maybe no big deal, huh? We have almost half of America today that doesn't believe it's happening. At the same time, 97% of the climatologists in the world, 97%, you couldn't get that many people to agree that water is wet. 97% of the climatologists in the world say it is without a doubt that human behavior is affecting the climate. We just had a gathering in Paris, historic. Almost 200 nations gathered together. Can you imagine? 200 nations gathered together and signed a document and said they agreed that human involvement was changing the climate. In today's world, to get that kind of unanimity is unbelievable. And look at what we have right now, the United States of America. Half of our elected representatives will not even admit that it's happening. Even though the rest of the world, all of the authorities agree, we have half of the people that say, no, it's not happening. Ask yourself the question. What will happen if we just continue on the path that we're on? The last time that we had the amount of carbon in the air that we have today, ocean levels were 40 feet higher. Can you imagine what the United States of America will look like if ocean levels are even 20 feet higher? As we sit here today at high tide, ocean water is in the streets of Miami. As we sit here today, we are seeing, just reported within the last week, ocean temperatures in the last 20 years have doubled. It took 1,000 years for it to double before, but in the last 20 years, we have doubled it. As we sit here today, there is more plastic in the ocean than there are fish. Is there a problem? Is there a need for activists? Should we look at it and say, well, really, I did good work last year on VegFest. Doesn't that qualify? Or I've got 2 out of the 3 of my siblings that now are eating a plant-based diet occasionally. I have an uncle that now can say vegan. There is nothing in the world that gives me greater concern than the path we're on. I've been fortunate that I've spent over 20 years traveling around the country dealing with the cream of the activist community. People that did not know that the word won't existed. What they looked at is they said, we can. Sometimes it takes longer than others, but we can. Look at this group. This group has enough activist power right here to shake the roots of this community. I sit here, I look at the back wall, and it says UUAM, Universal Unitarian Animal Ministry. Can you imagine how many hundreds of thousands of people have had new thoughts placed in their mind by the people that have been active in that cause? Just think if we looked at it tonight and we said, well, we're going to do something a little different. We have activists here. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's not a person sitting here in this audience that could not be assigned a task that could not accomplish it. And let's say that we decided that was going to happen and we were going to take the city of Portland and we're going to divide it up and we're going to give each individual here one task. And your task is not what you think. It's not about getting somebody to eat a plant-based diet. It's not about getting them to care about the life of an animal. It's not about the environment. It's not about global climate change. It's one thing: embedding yourself in an organization. Just think, if we took the first person in the line here and we say, we're going to assign you to the PTA. The PTA. All we want you to do is join the PTA, get involved, see what's going on, and then just do your thing. When the PTA decides to have some refreshments, you raise your hand and say, I think it's a great idea. I happen to be a vegan. What will be there for me? I'll tell you, after a lot of head scratching, looking in the dictionary, they will make some accommodation. The next person in the line we're going to assign to the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club. Can you, that environmental organization, they've got to be online, they've got to care about global warming, they're going to do the whole thing, and we're going to go and they're going to have a potluck dinner, and I guess what will be there is probably roast beef. And what you have to say is, well, wait a minute, here I am. I'm an active person in the Sierra Club, and I want to come and I want to take part, but I'm a vegan. We're going to have to change that. We change the dialogue. The next person in the line, we send to another organization. They're going to go out to dinner. Wonderful idea. You want to order first. When the wait person comes, you raise your hand and say, I'm ready. I'm a vegan, and I've looked at your menu, and we need to do a little modification. Everybody around the table will pick up their menu again and go back and take a look. What we need to do is we need to take our cause, the cause that we care about, the future of our children and grandchildren, and we need to make people aware in every organization, whether we're talking about every church, every service group, whatever. Because we now are a nation that you cannot exclude members just because they are different. Now, I don't think you're different by being a vegan. I think they're different because they don't understand. We've got to become an educational organization. That does not mean that we stand on the corner. It does not mean that we point at people and say, become a vegan. You have one finger pointed at them and three back at you. That does not work. What we need to do is to become friends of our future. Join us. We don't need to preach to them. We need to show them what your ideas and your lifestyle are about. You know, I want to arm you with some information. I want to show you what has happened on planet Earth in several different places when people could not comprehend what nature was trying to tell them. I'm sure that everybody here has seen pictures of Easter Island. Easter Island with large rock monuments sitting on the beach. Beautiful, but no people. At one time, Easter Island was a thriving community. It was full of people, and the stature of the community was how big of stone monument you could carve and cut down the trees and sled it down to the beach and stand it up. And if yours was bigger than everybody else's, then you had the greatest amount of accolades being thrown at you from the members of Easter Island. Well, there were some stowaways that came to Easter Island. Nobody paid any attention to them because they were rats. And the rats, they were just eating the seed from the trees. The people didn't care because they weren't eating those seeds. And so they continued to do what they were doing, and all of a sudden they stopped and took a look and said, wow, we have no new trees growing. We keep cutting down the trees to build boats and sled down to the beach in these large stone island monuments. We're running out of trees. But to have the accolades come from the community were much more important than not cutting down the trees. And they continued to cut down the trees until there were no more trees on Easter Island. And without the trees, there were no more boats. And without the boats, there were no more fish. And without the trees, there were no more nuts and seeds for the rats. And the rats started eating the humans' food. And if we went today in Easter Island and dug up the dumps from the extinct society of Easter Island, we would find two things. Human bones with human teeth marks in them. Because they could not understand what nature was trying to tell them, even when they knew that there was time to do something. And this is not the only case like that. Many of you have heard about the Anastasis that lived in Southwest America. They put in some of the finest irrigation systems the world has ever seen. The irrigation systems existing today are laid out exactly as the Anastasis laid them out 1,000 years ago. But they no longer exist. and they don't know why. What happened to all of those people? A wonderful society, fantastic irrigation. They actually were able to go and dig up some of the old irrigation system from the Anastasies and took into the laboratory and analyzed the logs. And for the type of log and the rings that were there, they could tell that they were cut 125 miles away. And all of a sudden, the light came on. The people needed trees for their irrigation system, but their source of energy was all wood. And they cut down the trees, and they had to move further and further and further away to get the trees for their fires and to get the trees to rebuild their irrigation system. Can you imagine cutting a tree that is this large, that is 20 feet long, and carrying it 125 miles? So we go, there's no Anastasies. So we go and we dig up the dump. And what do we find? Human bones with human teeth marks. They could not understand how to live with their environment. They could not understand that they had to have trees to survive, and they needed to save them, to replace them, but instead they just kept cutting them down, moving further and further away. It's exactly what is happening today. There's a number of people that want to cast a blind eye to what's happening. We don't care. It's got warm before. We don't have to worry about it. You know, look at the ocean. We have all of the carbon in the atmosphere, and the ocean level is not overlapping Manhattan Island yet. Don't even worry about it. When we look at what's happening in Greenland, the melting of the Greenland ice shield has the potential to raise the ocean levels by itself over 40 feet. This week they ended up being astounded in the Greenland ice shield that they found that the warm water was going up under the ice in the Greenland ice shield, and the calving of the icebergs was monumental compared to what they expected. We need to look. We need to think. We have to look at what's going on because it's happening around us. Look at what happened in St. Matthew's Island, 1944. We had a small detachment of military that were there, and they thought maybe we will not be able to resupply them. We need to give them a source of food in case we can't come back. And so they took 29 reindeer and put them on St. Matthew's Island, an island of 129 square miles, which was the Garden of Eden for reindeer. No predators. The reindeer loved it. It was like the Garden of Eden for reindeer. Needless to say, they were able to remove the detachment without having to slaughter reindeer. The reindeer were happy. 20 years after those 29 reindeer were put on St. Matthew's Island, 20 years later, there were 6,000 fat, happy reindeer. It was the Garden of Eden. They had never seen it so good. And 20 years later, there was not one reindeer that survived, because nature does not negotiate. As we sit here today, there are island nations in the Pacific that are shopping for a place to move. because they know their countries are going to be underwater. The Bangladesh, hundreds of millions of people in Bangladesh are going to be underwater. What in the world is India going to do when millions of people start wading ashore? How do you stop that? It's like trying to stop the tide with a pitchfork. We need to wake up. We need to understand that nature is calling out to us. It's telling us it's time to change. It's our task as activists, it's our task to answer the bell. We have to do it differently than we've done it in the past. You need to continue to do as much as you can, as well as you can for this organization, because this is the hub of the wheel of change. And then each one of us needs to go out into that organization that we have interest in and become part of it. Educate them. Educate. Do not spend all of your time trying to piss them off. Educate them and do it very carefully. You know, all you have to do, my wife happens to be a quilter. It is a disease. But the interesting thing is, she reaches a lot of other quilters. She is probably in the groups that she belongs, she is the oldest person. She is much older than I am. She and I have the same birthday. She's a year older. She will always be older than I am. But just by her showing up, just by the way she lives, by what she orders for lunch, she is impacting a sizable number of people that there's no way in the world that we would ever reach any other way. It's the same way when you go to the gym or if you're coaching a team. No matter what your endeavors are, we must turn the corner by 2050, where fossil fuels are no longer in use in our communities. Portland will be a much easier task than Ellensburg. We decided that we needed to start bringing the city commissioners along in Ellensburg, and so we decided we'd start with banning plastic bags. And you look at it and you think, well, that's really not too much of a task. It won't cost a whole lot just to walk in with your own bag rather than having a plastic bag. You would think we had called on the chasteness of their mothers. But we have to start, and we have to start educating people to making decisions, because the decisions in the future are going to be much more difficult than they have been in the past. They're going to have retributions that are going to extend far beyond our lives to the lives of our children and grandchildren. This organization, Northwest Veg, should be the model for every city in North America, where people come together, old and young, male, female, and work together to achieve a unified goal. Can we do it? No doubt in my mind. I have never seen a finer group of people in my life. I would bet my life you will be successful. Every one of us is betting our lives we're going to be successful. So let's look at it and say, this is something we can bite off and chew. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm going to pick one group, and I'm going to go and see whether this crazy ex-farmer rancher feedlot enterpriser's ideas have anything. And so I think what I'll do is, let me see what group I'm going to take. Not the PTA. Not the Sierra Club. But maybe what I should do is join a group that teaches people how to be a public speaker. And you know what's nice about that? They require you to stand up and talk about an issue. They have to listen. Toastmasters. I'm going to join Toastmasters. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to stumble and fumble, and they're going to think I'm the worst speaker in the world. And when we get around to it, we know what my topic is going to be: global climate change. How do we deal with it? Well, now we're to the important part. How do we deal with global climate change? I can list all of the things that I do. I can basically say to myself with great confidence that every time I spend $1, I'm voting on the future. Well, I can buy an electric car, but that'll only happen once. I can put up solar panels. I can only do that once. Or I can talk to them about my diet. The majority of global greenhouse gases are coming from livestock. I could talk to them about it. I could talk to them about the fact that 3 times a day, I commit myself to do something about an issue that I really care about, and it's every time I eat. Now, not everybody in Toastmasters is going to become a flaming vegan. But you know, when you plant a seed in somebody's mind, it never disappears. It'll be there forever. Your job is to become Johnny Appleseed. Your job is to go out and plant seeds without people having any idea in the world what you're doing or why. Can you imagine 50, 75 groups in the Portland area all having an infiltrator? And then to take the people that get the message, that understand what you're talking about, attach yourself to them at the hip, and march them right in here to become a member of Northwest Bench. And then instead of this group going out and infiltrating groups, we have twice as many people going out. And remember, it is important. Look at what happened with the animal ministry. Hundreds of thousands of people heard about an issue that they never wanted to hear about. There was no way in the world that they were interested in those animals or the lives of those animals, but they had a creed, and the creed basically said, you know, we care about all living things. We need to trap people with their own beliefs. And could there be a finer group of people to do it? Absolutely not. You could not put an ad in the paper, offer to pay people for what you are worth, and get a group of this quality to come and sign up. And what are you? You're a volunteer. And you know what's nice about a volunteer? They cannot be fired. I have more. This, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important issue in the world today.
Yep.
This will determine whether there is a future for my children and grandchildren. Stephen Hawking this week came out and said that he believed that humans would be erased from the face of the earth within 100 years. 100 years, that's a long time, right? 100 years ago, 75% of the people born in the United States of America were born at home. 100 years ago, there were 6,000 automobiles, 144 miles of paved road. 100 years ago, the speed limit was 10 miles an hour. 100 years ago, there were 30 people that lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. 100 years will go by in such a flash, it will be unbelievable. That's the task that we have. The task that we have right now in front of us is we need to accomplish our work between now, 2016, and have it completed by 2050. And that's the absolute outside limit. We don't need to hold meetings. We don't need to develop material. What we need for you to do is share your love with people that understand how committed you are to what you believe in because of the reason, and don't share it with them until they ask. If you tell somebody something they don't want to hear, the first thing that happens, you can hear their ears slam shut, their eyes roll up, and they don't learn a thing. But if you can establish a relationship to the point when they say to you, why in the world do you eat the way you eat? You have a 45-second window of opportunity of telling them why. So, leave here tonight, but before you do it, look around. Encompass the site of this group, because nowhere on the face of the earth is there a finer group of people than are seated in this room tonight. Nowhere in the world are there people that have more opportunity for success than the ones that are in this room tonight. And we don't need meetings. We don't need to develop a plan. What we need to do is take what's in our heart and go. See, it's working already. We need to exhibit the love that's in our heart on the rest of humanity, on the animals, on the environment. Every time and every case, when Homo sapiens have not paid attention to what nature is telling them, they have ended up dying, and usually from being eaten by their fellow inhabitants. And so if you are against cannibalism, join with me. And let's move forward and say, today is the first day of my new goal. And that's to infect as many people with truth as possible, attach at the hip, and bring them home. We can use the members. We can use the help. Nature will love you forever. Join with me. Let's change the world. Let's do it one person at a time as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.